And call this meeting to order. The reminder to silence electronic devices. Also, like to give a reminder with this meeting will it be audio and video recorded via the school board's website and social media platforms. Ms. Williams, can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Chairman Alexander. Dr. Shante Jones.
Here.
Ms. Stacy Cyberling.
Here.
Ms. Ellen Slobodnik.
Here.
Mr. Michael Cummins.
Here.
Mr. Paul Alexander.
Here. All right. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Cyberling, would you be willing to lead us in a moment of silence and then a pledge of allegiance?
Please stand for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Nope. All right. Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to new business, finance, fiscal year 23 end-year overview. Mr. Lyon.
Chair Alexander, members of the board, thank you for this evening to present our fiscal year budget summary, fiscal year 23 budget summary. This summary is subject to change. Our audit is winding down. These numbers are very close. There may be a slight adjustment once the auditors come back. Sometimes they ask me to rebook things or really rebook things if they feel they need to be rebooked on a different account line. As with everything, our budget is directly correlated with our strategic plans, our three pillars of reimagining the school experience, building a community and connection, and creating safe places. Looking at fiscal year 23, we first start out by looking at where our revenue came from. 64% of our revenue across the entire budget came from the Commonwealth, about 25% from the governing body, 10.5% from the federal grants, and those are still ESSER grants blended in there. That's why it's a little higher than usual. And less than 1% from local, which are grants, refunds, rebates, and such that. Fiscal year 23 expenditures by category, 78% of our expenditures are in salaries and benefits last year, followed by materials and supplies, purchase services, capital outlay, and other charges. Looking at a financial statement from last year, this is by fund from left to right. The first fund you look at there is the federal fund, and that is the title grants, Title 1, 2, 3, 6B, 619 for the special ed. In addition to that, it's also the ESSER and the ARP grants. Altogether, about $3.9 million in revenue there, and then expenditures under those grants around, actually at the same level. Those grants have to zero out. You'll notice under other use of funds, you'll see a negative value. Sometimes our grants cannot cover all the expenditures, and we have to rebook some of those expenses back to 205 in our general operating, so it balances out. So altogether in the general fund, looking from revenue at the top, from local sources, about $343,000. Again, from the governing body for operations, about $12.9, and then Commonwealth, about $34 million, for a total of $47.3 million. Looking at salary and benefits, about $38.1 million, and then our materials and supplies, purchase services, and so forth below, for a total of about $46.1 million. Now, that green circle of $1.2 million is our unexpended funds. That's a positive balance, our fund balance. Those are the funds we return to the governing body, which then are rebooked with our understanding to our stabilization line with the governing body for future needs of our budget. Now, $1.2 million, that is my best guesstimate right now. It may be $1.1 million by the time the audit's done. Sometimes we get late invoices. We just got a late invoice from the governing body for a shared position. So right now, I know that's under 1.2, it's about 1.16, I think, right now. Our carryover requests, these are things that we need to ask the governing body to return from that $1.2 million back to us. This was a grant that the money was given to us in advance, the health workforce grant expenses. We still have $11,800 left from that, and we're going to ask for that back from the governing body in our amendment, which is the presentation after this one. I want to draw attention to the capital fund because this is still new how we have reestablished this fund. Typically, this fund would be only funded by our local governing body. But because of a grant we received from the Department of Ed, the school construction grant money last year, which is a one-time revenue from the state, I wanted to break this out because I have two streams that feed into this fund balance. So last year, the governing body gave us about $1 million. Out of that $1 million, we purchased school buses. We finished the high school roofing project, transportation fuel management system, and outdoor air unit replacement project for a total of $380,000, which left $624,000 left over unexpended. Now, $600,000 of those dollars are the matching local money for the grant for the roof project on the high school, or at the middle school this year. I'm sorry, for the outdoor air units this year at the high school. At the state, we had the fencing project done at Cougar Elementary. We had the parking lot paving project done at the middle school, and the cell signal project down to elementary campus, and the bleacher replacement at the high school for a total of $629,000. Excuse me. And the revenue from the state is 1.9, so that left us at the $1.3 million unexpended amount from that revenue. So you add those two groups together, we have about $1.9 million in our fund balance for the capital fund summary. This is a comparison from 22 to 23 across those funds. And that concludes the FY23 budget summary.
All right. Any board member questions? No? All right. Then moving on to the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment.
Okay, thank you. My next presentation is for the fiscal year 24 budget amendment. This is our current budget that we're operating under right now. Again, it's directly correlated to our strategic plan. Thought I'd start off again with the capital fund analysis here. One thing I needed to show, and I wanted to show in this amendment, is a revenue revision. Anytime you build a budget, revenue is subject to change. And typically I don't bring it back to show that the numbers change because we can't control what the revenue is. However, I wanted, since the capital fund is very new, I wanted to point this out so it's clear to everyone as we go forward. When I built the budget last fall, initially was under the impression the city was going to give us $1.6 million, and the school construction grant money from the state, I had projected we'd have 1.5 in the revenue this year. And ended up that the governing body had to make an adjustment. They're going to give us the million next year in FY25. So I had to readjust the revenue down to $637,000. And the state school construction grant gave us all the money. They fronted the money last year, so it wouldn't be revenue this year. It'll be part of the fund balance. So as you look at the top of this slide, I readjusted this to $637,000 for the city. And then the state, I revised that to $600,000. But we didn't lose any money. All of those dollars are down here in the fund balance carryover of $1.9 million. In the state revenue, we will have the other half of the outdoor air unit project. That's a state $600,000 grant to cover half the project. As part of this amendment, we're also asking to establish a sixth fund. That's fund, we'll call it 211 other grants. Right now, sometimes we'll get grants from outside sources or from the state that are allowed to be carried over from year to year. In the past, those grant monies have been transferred to the Education Foundation, and then the Education Foundation would transfer those monies back to us in the fall. We want to get away from that practice, so we'd like to establish this fund so we can put those dollars there and just let them carry over to year as we work with those grant bodies to expend those monies. Now, it relates back to that Health Force Workforce grant of $11,000. So I kind of went through the bullets there already. So that's that. Need to bring to everyone's attention, the Governor of Virginia amended the budget in September and has provided additional revenue for very specific items. The governor's amended budget provided $204,000 to provide a 2% compensation supplement to go into effect January 1. This for all SOQ positions. This was not for all positions, but just SOQ positions. Now, it's our position that we need, if we do 2% for SOQ positions, we do it for everybody. That's the standard practice throughout Northern Virginia, too. So this, and I'll go into that in a little bit more in a slide. It also provided $613,000 for support positions, raising it from 21 per thousand to 24 per thousand students. Now, we already have that, so this money just offsets some of our local costs. And then the all-in per pupil funding distribution FY24 of $1.8 million. This has to do with, I believe Ms. Calso presented her plan for this a couple meetings ago or a meeting ago, and that's at $1.8 million for a total of $2.6 million. So looking at a summary of this revenue as part of this amendment, starting at the top, the carryover request for that health workforce grant of $11,000 to go in Fund 211. The state, as part of the Governor Youngkin's budget amendment, $818,000 into the general fund. Again, that's a $600,000 for support and $200,000 for 2% compensation supplement. And then I would like to put that $1.8 million into Fund 211 because we have 2 to 3 years to spend that money. So it'd just be cleaner to put it over there. And then all the expenditures to be booked there too. Title I, we received an additional $73,700 from, more than we planned on. And then the last three are the ESSER parts of the grant. These are the remaining funds we have that we didn't budget for, but they're monies that we'll need to expend by the end of next year, or we'll lose those monies. So the total revenue, additional revenue, is $3.1 million. So breaking down the expenditures now, looking at the 2% compensation supplement. Right now, it goes into effect in January 1, applying 2% to the salaries will cost us a total of $509,000. Of that $509,000, we will need to cover $305,000 locally. We are not asking the governing body for additional funds for that at this point. We do have positions that are unfilled, so we will try to use those dollars to cover this shortfall for this 2%. Now, this amendment does present somewhat of an unfunded mandate going forward, because once we do this 2% compensation supplement, our scales go up 2%. So when we go to build our next budget, the scales are already 2% more than they were when we began the school year. So it will impact FY25 as we look for dollars to fund that budget. And so I say all that too because in FY24, I may be back in the spring to ask the governing body and our school board to go ask for more money from the governing body because of that. If we need to fill our open positions, and these are high critical needs, we have open ESOL positions, counseling positions, and these are required. So if we find good candidates during the year, we're probably going to hire them as soon as we can. And if we do, I may come back in the spring asking the governing body for these additional dollars. But right now, we'll hedge our bets and cover this locally. So the other expenditures in the summary, if you look at this again, it's $11,000 to Fund 211. This mirrors actually the exact revenue table, but these are the expenditures and match those revenues. Title I is $73,000. ESSER is $383,000. General fund, all-in plan at $204,000, $613,000 for the support staff, and the $1.8 million all-in plan in Fund 211. All comes together to a sum of $3.1 million. There we go. So put this all together into our whole budget, starting with our first fund, the federal fund. You'll see the $457,000 in the middle column as the amendment. Add that to the originally approved budget of $2.5 million in revenue, and the same with expenditures, they have to balance. Our general operating fund, with this amendment, shows an additional $818,000 in revenue, and the same in expenditures, so they balance out. Our capital fund shows the revenue revisions, and the total revenue for the capital fund would be $1.2 million. Our original budget was approved at $3.1. I left that alone. I'm not asking for any additional appropriation there, but the difference is a negative difference of $1.9 million. If we would get of our are able to achieve all of our capital projects this year, that would be our balance, and we would cover that with the fund balance of $1.9 million, with a projected carryover of $46,000. Then looking at local grants, with that additional fund, you'll see the $11,000 for the grant, the $1.8 million for all in, and that would be a zeroed out cost of revenue against expenditures. The next column there are the other funds in our budget that are not part of the amendment. They are as approved originally. So you add all of this together. To the right, the proposed amount for all funds is $3.1 million for a total of $59.1 million in expenditures, and the revenue is $56.8. With, of course, the difference here is $2.3 million, but with our fund balances and all of the funds, we still have a fund balance of $2.5 across all funds. So everything is covered. And that concludes the presentation.
Any board member questions?
The 2% impacts
Yeah.
all pay scales?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Every pay scale.
thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right, so.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Does this include funds for, are like student lunches? Are we gonna, or was that something to discuss sooner than later? So like for next year for students to have free lunches, because are we gonna be Title I next year?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, all right, good. So that clarifies that question more so.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's a good question. It's a question we may have to come back to as we build the next budget, FY25. But in our current FY24 budgets, we're still a CSEP system. All students are eligible for free lunch.
Okay, cool.
But next year it may change.
Yeah, and I was going to say next year is where we're going to have to cross that bridge.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ahead of myself.
No problem. Good question. All right.
One more. We talked before about those senior fees. Is there any room in the budget as we're looking at this fiscal year?
We are looking to cover those. I will know more specifically if we're able to or not in about a month or two.
Okay, thank
But I
you.
anticipate yes.
Thank you.
All right.
This is small things.
Anything else? Last call. All right, so moving on to upcoming meetings, we have a regular school board meeting Monday, November 13th in board chambers. And we also, on November 15th through 17th, will be at the VSBA Annual Convention in Williamsburg, Virginia. Seeing no more business, can I get a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's got to be close.